Hello. Welcome to another episode of Navigating Cancer Together. I am your host, Talaya Dendy. Navigating Cancer Together is the show that has something for everyone facing cancer. Why? Because everyone is different with different needs, beliefs, and perspectives. Thank you for joining me for this episode. I encourage you to open your minds and your hearts. Navigating Cancer Together is everywhere. Make sure to subscribe and follow the show to stay updated on our latest episodes. Listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or your preferred podcast app or platform. Have you ever wondered how you arrived at a certain point in your life or a challenging circumstance? And also, have you wondered how you will get through it? If you listen to the previous episode, episode 160, called My Journey from Silence to Self-Advocacy, during that episode, I shared my introduction to Hodgkin's lymphoma. I also walked you through my experience with the healthcare system prior to my actual diagnosis. I was misdiagnosed and completely blown off by a primary care doctor, only to find out a year later that I had stage 3 Hodgkin's lymphoma. I ended the previous episode with me sharing that I had gotten a call from a nurse informing me that I had Hodgkin's lymphoma. And of course, that just sent so many different emotions all through me, so many different thoughts. And it was also frustrating because on a Friday, I got the call at the end of the day, driving from work to go home for the weekend. And I get this call telling me that I have cancer. And unfortunately, the nurse is not able to answer any of my questions. So, on top of fear, there is this thick, heavy weight of uncertainty because I didn't know anything other than you've been diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. And what is that? I didn't even know what that was. So go back and listen to episode 160. Again, it's called My Journey from Silence to Self-Advocacy. That will walk you through my experience leading up to my cancer diagnosis. During this episode, I am going to pick up with that call. And I just want to remind you that I get this call on a Friday, 4:30 for sure, probably after driving home. And the nurse informs me. Of course, I pull over. I must say that. So I pull over to take the call. And I expected her to say, oh, it's nothing major. I didn't expect her to say that it was cancer. She explained to me that her husband had cancer before, the same type of cancer, Hodgkin's lymphoma, and that her husband was doing really well. She wasn't able to give me any other answers, any other clue as to what was going on, other than her husband had a similar diagnosis and he was doing just fine. Well, that helped a little bit to let me know that this is something that I could live with, but that was it. So there I sat with those heavy words, you have cancer. There I sat with the heavy weight of uncertainty. There I sat with no answers. So what did I do next? I pulled over to a TJ Maxx store that I passed every day going to work and coming home from work. And I stopped there because number one, it was a familiar place. Number two, I needed to get myself together. Of course, I was nervous and anxious because I had just gotten that news. I didn't even know what it all meant. And there was no one I could talk to who could tell me anything. So I pulled over to TJ Maxx and walked around the store. I walked around the store for about 30 minutes, and all I kept hearing was, you have cancer, you have cancer. And I remember thinking, what does all of this mean? What does this mean for my life? What does this mean for my health? What does this mean for my future? Do I have a future? There were so many questions going through my mind, and it was really heavy. So I needed to ground myself so that I could drive home safely and not cause an accident. Because that was the last thing I would need, was to be in an accident, to drive off the road, or to, stop at a light and then miss a turn. Just so many different things could have happened had I not taken the time to just kind of recenter as best I could and regroup. Walked around TJ Maxx for at least 30 minutes, and it really did help to calm my nervous system. I walked through TJ Maxx as if I was looking for something. I didn't go in there to purchase anything. There was nothing I needed at that time. In a sense, I felt like, is there an answer somewhere in here? And I know that sounds absurd, but it was just like I wanted answers from somewhere. Could someone tell me something? But no, there were no answers. But what was there was the ability to calm myself, the ability to relax my nervous system, the ability to release a lot of the stress, tension, and anxiety that I was feeling. And so being able to do that really helped me to get home safely. Once I made it home, I immediately started making phone calls. And of course, the first person that I called was my mom. I let her know that I had gotten this diagnosis. And I just remember this silence on both ends. And then my mom proceeded to ask what that meant, what that was. And I told her I didn't know. And I would not know at least until Monday. Now, mind you, again, and I'm sure I've said it already a couple times, I got that call on a Friday evening. And I keep saying the day and the time because I really hope that this stops. People should not have to carry that heavy weight without any answers, without anyone to talk to for a whole weekend. So after I talk with my mom, I call my brother, and of course, he has questions. And I called some other people, and they had questions. So everyone had questions, but I didn't have any answers. And I had questions as well. So I really felt stress and anxiety rising again because there were people looking to me for something that I didn't even have, that I couldn't give them. And I didn't want to be responsible at that time for soothing others because that is what I needed. So, what I did in that moment was to really ask for space and to say, this is what I need. I need to take some time this weekend for myself. I just need to be alone. I need to think about this, try to figure out a plan, a strategy, try to figure out what all this means. And thankfully, my family honored my wishes because it really helped me in the long run. Looking back, I was advocating for myself in that moment. And I didn't know that that is what I needed, but that is what God told me I needed to do in that moment, was to ask for space, to work through my own emotions, to take care of myself, to just sit with what I had heard, not run from it, not try to reason with it in that moment, but to just sit with it. And it is one of the best things that I could have done. So for Friday night, all day Saturday, all day Sunday, I didn't leave the house. I didn't go anywhere. And I'm going to tell you, I think I experienced every emotion there is possible to experience. I was angry. I was sad. I was confused. I was stressed. I I just felt so many different things. I felt sadness. I felt grief because I knew that what things would look like going forward were going to be very different than what I was used to. I felt a sense of loss. I had a feeling that I would no longer be the same. And you know what? In that moment, once I got that call, I wasn't. I wasn't the same. because I had to stare mortality in its face in that moment. And I say that because when we hear the words, you have cancer, we have been taught and conditioned to link cancer with death. And I had to stop myself from sitting there and wondering, am I going to die? I didn't want that circling around in my mind. So, what did I start to do? Number one, I asked God, what should I do? I understand that everyone listening may not be spiritual. If you are listening to this episode and you're not a spiritual person, you don't believe in God, that is okay. I just want to share with you what worked for me. And I do believe in God. And I asked God, what should I do? And He led me the whole way. Although I could not get answers from the nurse, God gave me answers on what I needed to do to take care of myself in that moment and during that weekend. So I prayed. I was trying to figure out what could have potentially caused it. And I think I was more angry about that part because I did not smoke. I did not drink. I ate fairly healthy. I worked out. So I was trying to figure out, well, what could have caused this? And then I immediately started thinking about, once I really understand what this is, I wonder what I have to change. That call changed my life. And in terms of my health, it saved my life because that is when I really realized that you have to show up for yourself. And although I did not get answers during that call, I made sure I got answers and direction that Monday. I knew that it was going to be a very challenging time ahead. I didn't know exactly what that was going to look like. I knew that I was going to experience a lot of things that I had not experienced before. One thing that caught me by surprise was some of the people that I shared my diagnosis with, that I thought I could trust, that I thought would be there for me, were not. They weren't there. Some of them were the gossipers. Some of them were the people who took it upon themselves to share what I shared with them in confidence with others. That is a hurt that I had never felt before. And that is a hurt that I quickly had to learn to put to the side. Even though the actions or lack of actions from others were hurtful, it really opened my eyes to who was truly there for me, who truly cared about me, who cared about me when I had nothing to give them. It also opened my eyes to people who were just around because of what I could give them. So I learned a lot even before the treatment started. One of the other things that I thought about was what is going to happen to my job? Should I tell them now or should I wait until I understand what's ahead in terms of treatment and those kinds of things? And I really, in that moment, said, you know what? This is about me now. I get to decide when the time is right. I get to decide what I share and with who. I get to decide what I want to talk about. And that is one thing that I want anyone out there listening who has received a diagnosis of cancer or any kind to understand. You are not obligated to share your diagnosis with anyone that you don't feel comfortable sharing it with. You are not obligated to take care of the feelings and emotions of others. You are obligated to you. This is a time in your life where you have to put you first. And if you're someone like me who has always struggled putting yourself first, you will find the strength to do that. You must. You must find the strength to do that. But always take care of what you need. Never feel bullied into feeling like you have to do things to make other people feel comfortable. That is not your job. Your job is to show up for yourself, to advocate for yourself, to position yourself and put yourself in a better environment where you can heal. Your job is to be a participant in your care. Those are the things that you should focus on. And if you are someone listening and you need space to just kind of sit with what you've heard, to work through your emotions and your feelings, or whatever it is that you need to do, you have that right. And I hope that whoever is in your life can respect that. So that's essentially what happened after I got the call. Went to TJ Maxx before I could drive home, went there to calm down, to gather myself, made it home, immediately started making phone calls to my mom, my brother, and I could tell that they, were in disbelief. I could just feel the energy through the phone. And that really bothered me because I had nothing to give them. After I made the calls, I sat. I sat with it all and I emptied all of those things, all of the fear, all of the anger, all of the frustration. I had to work through all of that because I needed to be able to take action in some way on Monday so that I could get to answers. And I understand that this approach may not work for everyone. I am just simply here to share my story. And I am here to tell you that whatever you're feeling, whatever you're going through, it is valid. It's understandable. There is no manual on how to be someone diagnosed with cancer. And everyone's going to experience it in a different way. I think it's so important for people to really get in tune with who they are if they're not already. It's going to be so important during your cancer journey. So, in a nutshell, after that call on a Friday, that is what my weekend looked like. During the next episode, I am going to talk about when I started making the calls, when I got connected with my oncologist, and how I did that. That's so important too. All of these are very important and critical steps in the cancer journey, in your care. And I hope that you find something that I've shared with you valuable, helpful. It is giving you something to think about. Here are some very actionable takeaways from my personal journey, and I hope they offer valuable guidance to anyone in a similar situation, to anyone who's gotten a cancer diagnosis on a Friday and don't have answers, to anyone who's gotten a diagnosis of any kind. This can apply. But before I share that, I do want to say this because it's so important. I want you to focus on, why do you want to live? What's important to you? And use that as your fuel. Use that as your strength. Use that as your guide. If it happens, and I hope it doesn't happen to you, but if it happens that people don't show up, if it happens that you feel hopeless, if it happens that you want to give up, think about that why you want to live. Keep that in the center of your cancer journey. So, here are some takeaways that I think will be very helpful, just really summarizing what I found to be helpful. And there are things that I just stumbled upon. There are things that God shared with me when I asked, what should I do? Again, it's moving to create calm. Walking around that TJ Maxx store, it really helped me to, number one, get out of the environment that I was in where I received that news, getting out of my car. That helped to create calm. And it helped me to start processing and working through the difficult news that I had received. It helped to create a little bit of clarity, well, which was getting home safely. That's what I needed to do. And it kept me from going on the deep end. If you can, and when you get a cancer diagnosis, get out of the environment where you receive that news. Move around, walk, try to release that from your body. Try to get in a state of calm. The other thing is, if you feel like you need space, from your family, from your friends. If you decide to share the diagnosis with them, ask for it. It's okay. Your family and friends may feel pressured to have you share every detail, everything that you're feeling in that moment, but that may not be something that works for you, and that's okay. Take time for yourself to work through the emotions you are feeling so that you have energy later to take charge and to take action and do the things that you need to do. Release. Create that space where you can release. The other thing is spiritual connection. If that is something that you believe in, for me, faith played a big role in coping with the difficult situation and diagnosis of cancer. If I didn't have faith, I wouldn't be here today. If I didn't have God, I wouldn't be here today. Find your thing to make that connection. Ask what you should do and ask God or your spiritual connection to give you the strength to get you through it. I'm going to go into this in more detail in a different episode, but one thing to keep in mind is being very mindful and very careful about who you choose to be a part of your support system. I know that when a person is diagnosed with cancer, you will need someone. You will need at least one person. But that does not mean that you have to settle for less. So, what I'm saying is be mindful of who you confide in. You get to decide who you share your diagnosis with. Consider people who are reliable, trustworthy, who have a peaceful and calm presence and aura, people who have planning skills, people who can cope with challenging situations in life, people who will hold your diagnosis close to their chest if that's what you desire. Those are all things to be very mindful about. Lena Horne once said, "It's not the load that breaks you down, it is the way that you carry it." And that is a great reminder that I keep in front of me when challenges arise. And it was in front of me throughout my cancer journey. I stumbled upon that quote during my cancer journey, and it really carried me. It really helped me to be mindful of how I thought about things. It really helped me to be mindful when I was doing too much heavy lifting. So again, Lena Horne said, "It's not the load that breaks you down, it's the way that you carry it." And how you carry it early on is very important. How are you carrying your cancer diagnosis? No matter where you are in your cancer journey, even if you're past treatment, how are you navigating that survivorship landscape? How are you carrying that weight? Because that's a weight too. How are you carrying that load? So this is something that I think is so important in this quote. It just applies to so many different things in life. It's about mindset. It's about what you choose to focus on. Are you worried about the wrong things? Are you focusing on people who did not show up? Are you focusing on people who did not respond the way that you expected them to respond? Are you too focused on dying? Are you too focused on fear to the point where you can't take action? Be mindful of how you're carrying that load. Be very mindful of what you focus on. Be very mindful of your mindset. Take care of yourself. Ask for help. Do not carry the load alone. If you're struggling with a recent diagnosis or you know someone who is, please know that you are not alone. Consider joining our wait list for our Navigating Cancer Together community forum. You can join that wait list at ontheotherside.life/forum-waitlist. And don't worry, I will have all of this information in the show notes for this episode. I do want to point out when the community is live, You will connect with people that understand what you are going through. You will connect with resources, information, and so much more. Again, if you or a loved one, you've been diagnosed with cancer, or you're in the thick of it, you're into treatment, or even post treatment, this community is for you. This community is about bringing people together without the noise of social media in privacy. You can really open up and just let it all out, and no one will judge you. But there will be people there who will hear you, see you, and understand you. You can join the wait list at ontheotherside.life/forum waitlist. I want to thank our generous sponsor, Dr. Thomas Iannelli and the Croc Podcast. That podcast also includes the fabulous co host, Angel Santana. They provide valuable help to survivors and their families. I highly recommend listening to the Croc Podcast. Learn more at crocvip.com. That is spelled CROCVIP.com. I will also have that information in the show notes as well. Check out the Croc Podcast. You will not be disappointed. I have appeared on this show a couple of times, and Dr. Iannelli has been on Navigating Cancer Together. And actually, he will be stopping by again, I think next month, to share an update on what's going on in his world of radiation oncology and how he's supporting his patients. I would love to know your thoughts on this episode. Do you have any particular questions? Feel free to share your thoughts. Let me know on our private fan list page at fanlist.com/NCT podcast. I am so honored that you joined me for this episode. I would like to give a shout out to the Navigating Cancer Together community and valued listeners. Thank you for listening. That is it for this Wednesday. Until next time, let's keep navigating cancer together. Take care.